two, one. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but today we are starting a new month in the month of November, and it's kind of just a random assortment of films that we chose. A buddy of ours decided to forfeit his birthday choices, which allowed some other choices to come to the forerunner. So, Jake, if you wanted to tell us a little bit about the film you subjected us to this week, thanks to that, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Okay. So we are looking at a 2011 film by Hiroyuki Okiura called Momo e no Tegami, aka A Letter to Momo. It's a interesting little family drama from the director of Jinro, The Wolf Brigade, and it's a very different film from Jinro, but similarly very solid. And according to IMDb, 11-year-old Momo moves with her mother to a small island town after her father dies. When she arrives, she encounters three goblins that others cannot see, who try to help her cope with the loss of her father and the changes in her life. And in a sense, it's kind of interesting to kick off the month with this one because with with three of the main cast being yokai, and with the sense of dealing with death and loss and moving on, this is kind of a really good follow-up, I think, to the Halloween month. And it's a very different movie from the one that I subjected y'all to last week. So I think that's kind of fun. But that's just me. As the man says, don't take my word for it. Let's go around. Let's go around the room here. And well, Tammy, we'll start with you. Is this your first time with the Letter to Momo, and what was your initial impression?
Yeah, it's my first time because, well, I'm not normally into anime and dubbed. Besides, and it had both. So, yeah, I actually thought it was pretty decent. It had a good storyline. It the for it being an anime, it definitely got you interested in what was going on.
Mhm.
There was a little bit of a background as to where these goblins came from, so that was good. Yeah, I found it interesting. Like I said, I'm not normally into the anime and being dubbed, but no, I thought it interesting. It definitely is how you would say realistic in a lot of ways. How people how somebody would feel and what they might be going through. So
Right, right. You could even say to kind of bring in a different culture a little bit. I studied a lot of Latin American literature, and a lot of it is referred to as what's called magical realism. I feel like this kind of falls into that category because it is very down to earth, but there are goblins who are major parts of the story. It's very interesting.
right,
But is that it for your first up?
Yeah, I think that'll do for now.
All righty. How about you, Dave?
Um, I'm not a stranger to Japanese anime. Uh, although there is still a lot that I still need to watch.
Mhm.
Um, glad I watched this one. There was a moment I busted out laughing, and I'm sure you know.
I could guess.
But I thought the character design of these goblins was unique for the artistic, creative value of it, and the humor could actually be seen through the Japanese voices, um, even underneath the subtitle text. You know,
Mhm.
so that makes it a little bit unique, especially if it gets my other half interested in it to the extent where she is actually positive about it. So, um, but it was a very moving story a line. You can definitely get behind the character of Momo, and what she's going through. I'm sure all of us have felt a little bit of loss over time as we get older, and depending on how far or near you are to that person. Sometimes you say things that you never meant to say, and you think you can go back and retake them back, and you can't. Fortunately, things uh, can be said that everyone's allowed to grieve. This was a film about how Momo was able to grieve over her father's passing. So at the end of the day, it was a very entertaining watch. Um, I wouldn't mind a guarding me through some areas of loss in the future. I like the idea that there are those types of creatures hanging out that I don't see.
Right.
But it was an interesting watch. So thank you for putting this forward. I've seen it out in the wild, just not at the price range that I would have picked it up at. So.
Right.
But
Yeah.
glad I got a chance to at least see it. Be
Right.
able to knock another animation off my list to watch, because I never know with some of these animations that you bring up.
Yeah, right. Right.
Some of them can be quite childish.
Some, yes. Let's say that's one of the things I maintain when it comes to anime is that they really do run the gamut, and they can they can be anything depending on which one you're looking at, you know. Um, and I have not. It's been years. It's been years since I've seen Jinro. I think from what I remember, and especially if you guys enjoyed this one, I think y'all would probably enjoy Jinro because it is a lot of the same sensibilities being the same director, but it's a very, very different movie. If I remember correctly, it's a period piece and a war oriented movie. And so it's more action oriented. But yeah, and I think this was like the first movie he made in like 10 years or so after that one came out. So
It just so
it's
happens I actually have Jinro in my anime
yeah,
collection, so
it'd be worth giving it a look.
we'll, we'll have to put it forward as
Right.
a possible talk about movie.
Yeah, certainly. And then so for me, again, this one came out. If I remember correctly, it was a time where I was paying closer attention than I am now to like new anime, and a lot of um the buzz about it was high. It was like, this is the new movie from the Jinro director. It's the first one in years. And a lot of people were talking about it. And I don't think I had a chance to see it. I didn't have a chance to see it in the theater, but I was able to get hold of a copy through the library, I think. And I watched it and I really liked it. I was very, very impressed. Um, and again, just like with Genro, I kind of filed it away as this is a really good movie, and I plan to watch it again one day. And then I think it was a couple of years ago, I got a deal on eBay where I got a bunch of animated stuff. It was a mixture of American animation and Japanese animation, and this movie was part of the bundle. And unfortunately, it was on DVD. So I would prefer to have it on Blu ray, but I had that DVD just sitting on the shelf and just sitting on the shelf. And then when Brandon asked for us to do backups for this month, just in case, I just randomly, it was between this and The Nice Guys. I mean, that's how random it was. I just pulled one. I was like, let's go with Momo. And so, and as I said, and the reason why we're off to a bit of a late start, honestly, I timed poorly my second viewing. I rewatched it in Japanese, but I also watched it for the first time in English. And to me, this is one of those stories that's so quintessentially Japanese that it's best watched in the original language. But it also is a very universal theme. And you can watch it either way. And the English dub is pretty good. It's pretty good. Um, and I do want to do a quick note about some of the voices, particularly the three yokai. In the original Japanese, Iwa, the big one, is voiced by Toshiyuki Nishida. I'm not as familiar with him, but Mame, the dumb one, that's the best way to put it. None of them are super bright, but
The one that looks like
the little one, the Gollum-ish one, is voiced by Cho, who
yeah,
is the voice of Brook in One Piece. So he's a well-known actor. And Koichi Yamadera plays Kawa, and he has been in everything. He played Spike Spiegel in Cowboy Bebop. He played Ryoga on Ranma and Half. He is one of the major names in Japanese voice acting. In the English dub, we have Bob Bergen as Mame, Fred Tatasciore, who's in everything, but usually in bit roles, plays Iwa, and Dana Snyder, who plays Master Shake on Aquitaine Hunger Force, is Kawa. And I love the idea that, what's that?
I said okay.
Yeah, and our main character, or no, the mother of the main character, Ikuko Miara is the mother, is voiced by Stephanie Sheh in the English, and voiced by Yuka in the Japanese. So she's also voiced by some pretty big name people. So I quite like that. If you're more familiar with anime, you'll know the name Stephanie Sheh because she's in so much stuff. I want to say she's the voice of Sailor Moon in the English dub, actually. She's done a lot. But so anyway, getting to revisit that was kind of fun. Both of them. But for me, this again, second and third viewing. Honestly, the second time around, I was sitting there going, oh my God, Dave and Tammy are going to hate me because I'd forgotten how slow paced the movie is.
It's also a little bit longer than
Yeah.
most animes. So
Yeah. IMDb says 2 hours even, like 2 hours on the dot. That might be accurate. I'm not sure.
Tammy, because she was getting tired because she was up
Yeah.
since she went to and was on third shift and whatnot. Unfortunately, when I went and copied it to disc, my original copy didn't pan out too well. I had it done, so I had to go back and recopy it. So it took some time for us to watch the rest of it. But
you got it done, right? But again, the my impression of this one, of course, is that generally very positive. I felt honestly that the yokai, the goblins, um, are a little goofy looking, but on the other hand, they literally came out of an old school book on goblins and monsters that Momo finds in the attic. Like, apparently, when they came down to Earth, they just took shapes out of the book. So they look like some of the old traditional, what we in modern times would say, oh man, why was anyone ever scared of this? But it also it kind of adds a bit of otherworldly levity almost to the proceedings of what could be a very much a downer of a movie for much of its length, because Momo is very mopey for much of the movie. But and especially in the English dub, I didn't notice it as much in the Japanese, but in the English dub, she comes off as really mopey. But understandably, I mean, as when we get into the plot, I mean, we'll get into that, but it's understandable. It's just, and things really do turn around as it gets towards the end, which is great. So generally, yeah, my impression is I think very highly of the movie. I am glad I finally had an opportunity to revisit it after meaning to for some time. And I'm glad that that we got a couple of folks here, since Brandon decided to put up both of my movies while he's unable to join us. It's kind of it's always nice when we don't have to do just two people, and that's always good. So this will be fun. So to launch back into we've touched a little bit on it, but the basic gist of this one is we have a young lady, a tween, who has she and her mother are moving to a small island. I think they call it Shio Island or something like that, or Shiori. I think it was Shio. But it's very close to Shikoku. So it's on the lower end of Japan in the subtropical area. Apparently, a bunch of the people on this island grow citrus. That's referenced several times. So it's only accessible by ferry. They built a bridge that's not quite finished when the story starts, but for right now, this is a very isolated community. And Ikuko, the mother, apparently spent much of her childhood here with her I was a little unclear about whether they were exactly her parents. She calls them auntie and uncle, so I'm guessing they might actually be aunt and uncle. Uh, but it's she had asthma as a child, so she spent a lot of time there. Momo's never actually been to the island. Her mother tells her that the last time she was there was right before Momo was born. So uh, they are kind of going home, if you will. But for Momo, it's a completely. She lost her father just a couple months ago, and now she's being uprooted and moved to a new place. So things are already shit for her.
Well,
And
yeah. And,
yeah,
you also have to bear in mind that she said some unkind things to her father before
yes,
he left on that
we don't.
fated trip.
We're not privy to that right away, but we do find out pretty eventually. We find out that they had a fight the last time she saw him, and she basically said, "I don't care if you come back," you know. And basically, her father is a researcher. He's a marine biologist, which I always love it when I see people kind of in fields that mean something to me. And I've said before, in another world, in another life, I would have been a marine biologist. If I didn't have all the issues with my ears that made me afraid to go underwater, I probably would have been a marine biologist. Luckily for me, I fell in love with plants and snakes and other things on the land. But I still love going out and catching fish and all that stuff. And I envy people who can do that for a living. So her father goes on these research trips out to sea, and they had a fight the day that he was called away abruptly to go on one of these. Later, we find out why she was so upset, although she herself admits she's not sure why she was so upset that she was downright cruel to him. Uh, she's not sure why she took it that far, but we come to find out eventually. And then again, spoilers, everyone, y'all who watch this channel, you know that. um, she was trying to do something really thoughtful and nice for her parents, because apparently I think their first date was they went to see the Vienna Boys Choir. And so she found out they were actually going to be in town on her parents' anniversary. And she got her mother to buy tickets for the three of them to go together to see them. And
But
it's
but she made her mother promise to not tell her father.
right. They wanted it to be a surprise.
Yep.
But he got this call that, oh, I need to go work. And she was furious, and she couldn't understand why he couldn't, and because she didn't want to spoil the surprise, she didn't want to tell him why, So she is being eaten up by guilt over that. Because she told him, I don't care if you come home. And then he never came home. And yeah. And her mother puts up a good show, which is only making things worse because she thinks her mother didn't care.
Yep, because she uprooted her from Tokyo, and then as soon as she came to this island, she immediately started working as a nurse or going to school as a nurse.
Going to school, yeah. Not to mention, she runs into an old chum of hers, who clearly is smitten with her. And Momo sees her mother smiling and laughing with this other guy. Later on, she sees her straight up flirting with him.
Yep.
And she's very upset about that too. So it's like she sees all this evidence that her mother seems to have moved on already, because her mother doesn't want her to worry, and she's hiding the fact that she's heartbroken. And it's just like, sometimes it's better to be honest with people. But that's one of the reasons why, he said this movie is universal in its themes, because grief and loss is a very universal thing, and it is tricky. It is full of awkwardness and miscommunication and all that stuff.
And these goblins, otherwise
Right.
known as goblin or guardians,
Right.
come into her world space,
Right.
kind of like Glinda of the North,
Right.
Wizard of Oz, because they come in bubbles, except they're not big.
Yes, although Glinda she comes right in. She makes her presence known. The yokai try to be sneaky about it, but apparently when they came down to Earth, they came down as water droplets. They dropped right on Momo's head. And apparently that's not what you're supposed to do. And when they're like, why can she see us? They're like, oh, maybe it's because we dropped on her head. Like, but it's like they're not the most competent, especially Mame is so stupid the others are frequently taking him to task for being stupid. But on the other hand, he's so
adorable.
He's adorable, and he's totally easygoing because he doesn't remember things. Very few things bother
I would
him.
say he's very.
I like Mommy.
Yeah. There's one scene where we see him agitated, but most
I like
of the time,
Mame, and I like the one that farts.
you would. That's Kawa. Yeah. Yeah, so we have but we, of course, we don't get to them right away. We get to, first of all, we are introduced to the grandparent, to Momo's grandparents, or we're introduced to their new living arrangements. They go to the store, and she's like completely flabbergasted that, are you serious? We don't have a supermarket, we don't have a mall. Her mother's like, nope, this is what we have here.
Just like a general store.
Right. Yeah. Kind of like, actually, I went to Aldi for the first time today, and it's kind of like Aldi. It's a market, but it's not a big market, but like you said, a general store. It's the kind of place you go in the country to get everything you need, and they meet a couple of kids. Her Ikuko's parent. Well, again, I guess
her mom pretty much embarrasses her because she's like, "Are you single?"
Basically, they had been told already, "We're so happy you're here. There are no young people on the island." And Ikuko's like, "Oh, I'm so flattered you think I'm young," which she looks like she's probably in her late 30s. That would be my guess. So, yeah, damn it, she is young. and then Momo, they happen to meet this kid who's got his little sister with him, but he looks like he's about Momo's age. And yeah, Ikuko basically pushes them together. Like, she's like, they're so great. There's someone here who's your age. And Momo's like, no. And I'll admit, her mother.
Are you single?
Pretty much, yeah.
She's basically marketing her off in the Trader Joe's. So, I mean, I get it. Obviously, she has no problem with her apparent like daughter, maybe even possibly dating that young.
She wants to make sure that basically she's trying to what do I want to say?
Make friends.
She wants her to make friends. Yes. she wants her, but she also wants her not to be alone. She doesn't want her to feel lonely. And it's obvious that Momo is lonely. And because of because of Ikuko's class schedule and her feeling the need to help out around the garden.
Oh,
Yeah,
the orchard.
the orchard, yeah. She feels like she needs to do this stuff because she wants them to get on their own feet and stand on their own. And Momo is feeling neglected and left out. And her mother's like, yeah, if you spend time with people your own age, maybe it won't be so bad. It probably, I don't know if she specifically was upset or happy that the kid was a guy, but whatever the case, his name's Yota. The girl's name is Umi. And they, it's awkward at first between Yota and Momo because they're both keenly aware that they've been shoved together. But they eventually hit it off, and Yota in particular takes an interest in her. And Yumi glomps onto her like big sister mode very quickly. And eventually we come to find out Umi is of an age where she can still see the yokai. And that's a common thing in literature and storytelling, is the idea that kids to a certain age can see things that adults can't because they're more open-minded, they're more imaginative, whatever. But when Umi encounters Mame, she looks right at him and it is just glares right at him. And Yota's like, oh, she just gets that way. He just dismisses it. But then when Momo grabs Mame by the wrist and drags him away, he's like, what is she doing? It's kind of
because he's noticing that she's just as weird as his little sister.
right.
And he mentions her weirdness to his friends later on when he invites her to go jump off a bridge.
Right, as you do. But so anyway, and then we do get kind of a gradual introduction to the yokai when it's a day. Was it the first? I don't think it was the first day that it might have been the first day that Momo was going.
No,
second day.
The first day that she kind of goes over to the home of the boy. He shows her his grandfather's straw sails. Well, I think he runs into her on the street.
Well, he ran into her because she ran away.
Correct. Because it's the first day that she actually opens up that box that her grandmother or grandfather.
Well, she did that right away while her grandmother was showing her the attic. That was the she found it then.
Well, then we can blame it all on her grandmother.
Well, basically, what I was saying, like, I think there was one day where she was just puttering around at home, and like the guy came to hook up the phone and all that stuff. But then I think it was the next day that Mame followed Ikuko off the island, and the other two were at the house, and we hadn't really seen any of them yet. But Momo got a glimpse of something following her mother onto the boat, like just an outline.
Well, and then he believed that her mom went on that train, I think.
Right, she was very puzzled about that. But then she hears muttering. She hears murmuring upstairs or whatever. She hears something talking about getting into the kitchen. At one point, she hears her own name, and it kind of freaks her out a little bit. And then at one point, she goes down into the kitchen and sees that the pudding that she got out had been eaten. She's very upset about that. And then I think it was then that Koichi, the guy that her mother was friends with, came by to check on them or whatever. And because he's like the mail delivery, the postal
Yep.
delivery
First
guy.
time he shows up,
He's
he
not
actually
very
gets
good.
the wrong mail.
Yeah,
So-
he's not very good at it. She says, I thought you went into business for yourself. And he's like, oh, yeah, it didn't suit me. I like working. I like this job better. And then I apparently like his original job was a delivery service. so he obviously isn't very good at it, but at the very least, if he can draw a steady check without having to worry about being the boss,
He does appear to be the only male dude on the island, anyways, and
well,
I believe
yeah,
he's on like a scooter of some sort.
there are others. Like we only see Yota's father a couple of times, but he is there. But he seems to be one of the few who's unattached. Let's put it that way. And again, he clearly has feelings for Ikuko. So basically, Momo gets really freaked out. She knows someone's in the house. She gets really freaked out. Do you remember exactly what set her off to make her run out? There was something that really set her off. But whatever the case, she gets freaked out. She runs away. She almost runs into Koichi, and he's like, hey, well, how's it going? What's going on? And then she sees figures come up around him and run by him. So they're just outlines, vague outlines. But she sees them and runs crying away. And he's like, am I that scary? But she's running for dear life. And eventually she runs into Yota. And that's when he, takes her to the, but not before she encounters these things a couple more times. And then when she comes home, she goes to the wharf to wait for her mother because she's afraid to go home. And when she goes home, she has her mother open the door and go in first. And while she's waiting by the door, something, Mame, gets it in his head to lick her leg for some reason.
And she screams.
She screams. And she's like, it's right there, right there. And her mother looks at her like she's insane. And but anyway, so we've basically gotten our partial introduction at this point of the yokai. But up until this point, is there anything that you guys wanted to talk about as far as scenes I skipped or any of the particular characters that we've encountered to this point that you wanted to talk a little on?
No, because I think Mame is like one of the main goblins that you see around, because he's basically following Ikaku around, especially her mom, I guess.
When he doesn't get distracted and chase butterflies, apparently.
Correct, and get hit by buses, right?
Right.
Yeah, because he did mention that I was following a butterfly and then I got hit by a bus.
Right.
I get a kick out of the mother's friend, who had his own business, and now that he's a mail courier and that he can mix up the addresses, and everybody's all okay. You can just go get the right stuff and switch it around, and everybody's all okay.
Right. I'm always reminded. I don't know. You guys have seen some Cheers, right?
Yeah.
So y'all know Cliff and his obsession with being a mail carrier is this noble calling and all this.
Yeah.
And there's the great episode. There's the great episode where Woody may have to go home because his parents feel like he needs to come home. That it's not a good environment for him in Boston. And so Diane makes this movie with all his friends chipping in to explain why he needs to stay. And the part with Cliff, he goes on a ride along, if you will, to help him deliver the mail. Although, of course, you know, he won't touch the mail because that would be a crime. He just is following along. And we see Cliff deliver all the mail on this one hallway. And then behind him, while he's addressing the camera, we see everyone in the hallway going back and forth, exchanging the mail with each other. It's like, you got them all wrong. I was reminded of that when I saw that. But at any rate, yeah, Cliff would be he would be embarrassed by this guy, but would be, not that he's any better. But he anyway.
I would say that that this mail carrier is a combination between Cliff and Mr. McFeely.
Yeah, it's good times. So we have the I'm trying to recall exactly.
There is a moment where the goblins realize that they're munching on apples from the orchard, and
Right.
she's sitting at the family cemetery place.
Actually, I think they're unripe oranges. But yeah, that's what I was getting at. I was trying to remember why Momo ran out into the rain, and I think it was she was upset that her mother wasn't believing her. But she runs out into the rain and finds her way to a local shrine. I think it was a local shrine, and they're sitting there with her. The two big ones are sitting there eating, and she kind of catches glimpses of them. Or actually, I think she may have actually seen Mame at this point. I think she got a good look at him, and that freaked her out. But she...
Well, no, it's storming. It's storming.
Yeah.
It's thundering and lightning.
It's like when the lightning flashes. When the lightning flashes, she gets... Yeah. And she knows they're there. And once it clicks in her brain, they are there. She sees them for good.
And then Mamie lands in her lap.
Right. He comes up, he flops in her lap, and he just kind of, I landed in Momo's lap or something like that. And she just kind of screams, and she looks at them, and they realize she is looking right at them. And
I think
that, yeah. What's that? Yeah. And so they realize, you know, this isn't how it's supposed to go. We might be in trouble here. And so they make up some sort of cockamamie story about this
Lord Shugawa.
Lord Shinden or some such thing. I can't remember exactly.
I think it was Lord Shugawa.
Yeah, Sugawara. There you go. Lord Sugawara. And about how he had banished them and they were locked in the book for 1,000 years, and she let them loose, and now they are there to watch over her or whatever. And of course, Mame believes it because he doesn't know any better. And I mean, he does know better, but he can't remember it. And eventually we come to realize what they're actually doing there. And we kind of alluded to it already, but basically And it's a really interesting premise. It's a really interesting idea. They call themselves guardians. And the idea is that as they explain it, and I like this, they try to be really cagey and really coy, and they keep talking about we can't tell her too much or we'll get in trouble. It's against the rules and all this stuff. And finally, the big guy, Iwa, tells her that, well, you see, your father, when people pass, they wander the earth for a while. They can't go straight above. They keep calling it above. That's pretty much, I guess, heaven or the afterlife or whatever they call it. They just call it above. They When someone dies, they wander the earth for a while, and then they're ready to go. But while they're wandering the earth, they can't watch over the people they've left behind. So the guardians fill that role for them. And as soon as the father ascends to above, they're going to disappear because they won't be needed anymore. And like I said, I think that's a pretty fun concept. I can't remember if I've ever seen a story where that's the exact concept that I've seen put forward. Have you guys ever seen it put quite that way?
No, I don't believe I have.
Neither have I.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of, and why am I looking at a trailer for Allison and Lilia on my IMDb page? I'm sorry, I was distracted here. Allison and Lilia is an awesome show. I really hope we do it one of these days on the Anime Anticlimax. But why am I looking at that trailer for a Letter to Momo? Anyway, whatever. They show weird stuff on IMDb sometimes. So what was I going to say? So Iwa tells her all this, and then he's like, but I don't want to say too much. And then Kawa looks right at him and says, you just told her everything. So that was pretty good time. But
and then back at where they live, I guess she's got she's always constantly berating them for stealing food.
Yes, that is a big issue.
And I think she gets in a little bit of a tussle with Kawe, and
right.
Out drops evidently their pass.
That's pretty early on. That's where she basically, after freaking out about it at first, and then realizing that they're sneak thieves, and she wants them gone, basically, and they being less than fully competent, they manage to drop their travel pass, and she takes it and uses it for blackmail for a while. But yeah, they are relentless. They are constantly hungry. And they say that's part of their punishment. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but they are constantly hungry. They seem to have no concept of ownership or possession. And actually, goblins in many cultures tend to be associated with stealing stuff. And so these guys are always stealing. They're ransacking the orchards. They're stealing. At one point, we see Kawa stealing from the general store. We find that they stole Umi's raincoat, One of the first times we see it, I think it's right before the whole scuffle and Momo taking the travel pass, is Iwa brandishes a quote magic wand that is actually one of Momo's pens, and she's like, "Hey, that's mine," and he's like,
And it's
"Oh,
one of the, I believe it's one of those pens that actually changes color.
yeah, it's one of the the ones where you push the different buttons and different color inks become
Yep.
one of those." Um, and so there's this constant issue of her trying to keep them from stealing. At one point, she makes a deal with them of, well, she does make a deal with them. If you stay, don't steal. And they agree, and they kind of hold to it for a few days. But at one point, she asks her grandfather, "Is there a place you can get food for free on the island?" And he's like, "Well, fish." And she's like, "They don't want fish." And he's like, "What?" And she's like, "Is there something else?" And he's like, "Well, maybe in the mountains." So Kawa, Iwa, and Momo go up into the mountains to look for food, where they encounter wild boars. Kawa and Iwa steal the boar's young.
I also
Not
have to.
brightest thing.
I think
What's
we
that?
also have. I think we also have to mention that her grandfather actually explained to her that his father had actually told him
Yeah,
that he used to see these
yeah,
guardians because evidently she had seen this painting that was
yeah.
above.
Well, both of her grandparents tell her that their father had been into the folklore and the monsters and stuff, and that book she found was his. But yeah, the grandfather goes one further and says he claims he saw one, and
Well, and he also says, "Oh, I probably shouldn't have told you about any of that because then bad things will happen to me." That's what my
right,
father has said. So
and
I suppose I shouldn't have.
he had started trying to tell him about it, and then she's like, "Oh, I don't want bad things to happen." Um, but yeah, they and definitely she hits it off pretty quickly with her grandparents. They seem to really enjoy having her around, and her grandfather in particular, she seems to get along really well with. So that's a good, that's an early kind of good thing for her in terms of settling in and that kind of thing. Um, the And I know we're doing some stuff out of order. We tend to do that a lot.
Yeah.
I think that's fun, but uh, but like I said, they go up in the mountains, and the two yokai grab the young of the wild boars. Now, first of all, wild boars are notoriously ornery critters. Notoriously ornery critters. And second, you know, people talk about, going all mama bear and that kind of thing because bears are famous for protecting their young. They're not the only ones. And so taking the boar's offspring
And I
was
thought the
not the
offspring were
smartest.
really cute.
Well, yeah. I mean, of course, they grow up to be these horrible, horrible beasts, but whatever. It's obviously a boneheaded move that they did to catch those babies and try to
Shame on
make
you
them
for
for long.
stealing those baby pumbas.
Exactly. And they end up wrecking two separate lifts that go up the mountainside because the boars attack. They end up striking out looking for plant munchies that was growing wild. And she comes to the realization, yeah, I'll bet you the boars probably ate everything, which is very true. wild boars are one of the worst pests on the planet. And it's partly because, yeah, they will ruin an area rooting for food and eating what they can find. And yeah, I could bet you that the boars probably were less than productive on that particular stretch of mountain. But so they have that interesting encounter. But the upshot of it at the end is that they're at the top of the mountain, and Momo ends up looking out across the island and the islands nearby, and she's like, you know what? This is kind of nice. She gets a good view of everything, and it gives her a different perspective than she had before. And so, it wasn't really a wasted trip. It was just, I'm sure the yokai would beg to differ. But she gets home and her mother's like, oh, well, you're all dirty. And she actually smiles and laughs, and it's probably one of the few positive moments they've had in some time. But then the yokai get tired. What's up?
I would have to say that they go on a stealing spree.
I was going to say they get tired of being good. and
David, you missed talking about your favorite part.
Oh,
yeah.
While they were being chased by the boar,
yes,
Kawe
I was willing to
using his other end as a weapon of mass destruction.
Yes, it was.
I
was willing to lay money.
I'm sure if you hadn't have seen it, you'd have been blown away.
Well, they very nearly were. But yeah, that was, as the man says, it stinks. But yeah, we come to find out is during that little interlude with the boars, we find out some of the special gifts, if you will, that these two have. Iwa is strong and fast, and he ends up running the cart up the mountain much faster than its creaky old motor could. Now, I did have to wonder if doing so wouldn't have completely burned out the motor, even if the boars hadn't ruined it. I'd say very likely. But he still, for a while, keeps them out of danger. And then when the boar comes down from the upper side of the mountain, yes, that's when the other one lets loose with his special attack. And yeah, Dave, as soon as you said there was one part you busted out laughing, I was like, I would lay money that I know what he's talking about. But the okay,
I'm sorry, but if there was any sequel to this, I would love for them to use more farts.
Right, I can imagine. The and it's really funny because in the past week I revisited the first two Ghostbusters movies, and honestly, I could see that fitting right in with even though Ghostbusters is an absolute classic, and I won't take anything away from it, I can imagine that they probably at least considered having that exact joke.
Right.
And they may very well have gone with. They certainly had some off-color jokes. That's for sure. At any rate, we have when they finally lose their cool, her mother says, have you seen my mirror? And mom was like, no, isn't it on your dresser? And she's like, no, I don't know where it is. Then we see Iwa and Kawa sitting out in the garden, in their garden, in the backyard or whatever, just munching away. Well, Iwa's munching away on tomatoes while Kawa is looking at the mirror and just admiring how handsome he is and letting us
definitely a
know how
lot of
deluded. What's that?
there.
What's that? I'm sorry, I missed what you said. All right.
A lot of vanity in Kaiway.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Humble is not his middle name.
Of course, Iwa what grabs the mirror and is like, "Hello, beautiful."
Well, yeah. He says something like, "Oh, you're a handsome fella," or something like that. And then later, Momo catches them with a crap ton of stuff that they've stolen. Incidentally, we should note that the police are aware that there is an uptick in violence and vandalism to the orchards and stuff being stolen from the orchards, but also stuff has gone missing all over the island, apparently, especially from girls. For some reason, these three really seem to have a thing for girls' paraphernalia. I don't know why. But they really do. And they've stolen a bunch of Momo stuff. Again, they stole Umi's raincoat. We see all this stuff that they've stolen that's just random knickknacks that girls or teen girls would have. And in addition to all the food that they steal. And Momo catches them red-handed. And one of the things she sees is she sees her mother's mirror. And she begs for it back. She's like, that was a gift from my father to her. Give it back. And Kawa will have nothing of it. And in the scuffle, they end up breaking the mirror. And that brings her mother running. And she can only see Momo and the mess. She cannot see the goblins. And it causes Momo to take the blame. And she even goes so far as to smack her. You get the impression she could have smacked her a lot harder, but still, this is out of the blue pretty much.
Yeah, she straight up believes that Momo is lying. There's nothing
Right.
that she can see that would explain otherwise.
And this is what
really blows up at her, and I think it's because of everything that she's kept inside of herself that has just kind of bubbled up to the surface.
That's a big part of it. Both of them have been bottling up things inside and not communicating well. So that's a big part of it. And again, this is one of the more relatable, universal, and also frustrating things in the movie is this lack of openness and communication, but also the idea that a lot of times people tend to, like, if you don't have enough imagination, you'll oftentimes blame other people for lying if they tell you something that's not easily believable, I guess is a good way to put it. Like I mentioned earlier, how the fact that Umi can see them too, this movie does kind of acknowledge the idea that the older you are, the less likely you're going to be plugged in to the spiritual, the supernatural, what have you. But also, this movie is kind of again, I think I didn't plan it this way, but it ends up being kind of a nice bridge from the Halloween viewing, because right here we see at play a very very common trope of horror movies that we have mentioned on this channel, especially slasher films and films like that, where the adults just won't listen to the youth. You know, it's like it's very interesting, that parallel, if you think about it.
Well, yeah. All the adults always think they know everything.
Exactly. Uh, and even though this isn't being played as the stereotypical, oh, well, they're just kids, they don't know shit, this is still similar because it's, yeah. And it's kind of frustrating. You feel for Momo. She takes the heat for something that is not her fault because she simply can't explain it in a way that her mother will believe. Like her mother says straight up, tell me the truth. Do not lie to me. So she does. And of course, her mother thinks she's being lied to. And yeah. And so, of course, she gets really pissed and they have words. And she ends up running away and going off to the beach and just pouting. And uh, Yota comes and finds her, and he tries to cheer her up by telling her about the upcoming festival where the fathers take the boats into the sea. And that was exactly the wrong thing to say. She's like, my father is dead. And then, walks away again. And he's left feeling like an idiot. But meanwhile, a typhoon is approaching. And we saw like the news reports and everything. The wind has already picked up a little bit. Her mother gets really concerned and goes out looking for her. And this is where the whole asthma thing really comes to a head. She runs into Yota and his father, and they tell her that, oh, I saw Momo at the beach a couple hours ago, but I haven't seen her since. But she, at this point, has already become pretty frantic because she's been looking everywhere. And she basically collapses in front of them, unable to breathe properly. And they help her back home. And she's having a major asthma attack as the storm is bearing down on the island. They can't find a doctor or a nurse. And I believe, if I remember correctly, is it Koichi? I think that Momo runs into, and he tells her what happened. And she goes rushing home, only to find out, that like her mother, it's not a good situation. Like it's not like critical yet, but it's
There's a
not
possibility.
good.
There's a possibility that if a doctor doesn't get
Right.
to her like before this typhoon ends, that
Right.
something critical could happen to her mother.
Right. And
so,
I have to admit, I've never had asthma. That was never an issue for me. I've had serious issues with bronchitis. I had at least one bout with COVID that was respiratory. And then I had that lung infection where my left lung was collapsed. And so I know what it's like to be unable to breathe. That was frightening. So, like, I can't 100% understand Ikuko's situation, but I understand it well enough to know that she was not feeling good. And when Momo saw it, she was freaking out because she's like, I lost my father after being angry with him. I can't let that happen with my mother, too. And she's like, anything. She begs with the yokai, please help me. They won't help her. No one else, the only doctor on the island is on another island. And because of the storm, he can't get there. The bridge isn't open. It's finished, but it's not open. And she finally gets the idea of, I don't care, I'm going. And she sets off. And Koichi and Yota go after her to stop her until Yota realizes she's not stopping. This is critically important to her. And he turns around and talks Koichi into taking her. And they get part of the way there, and the yokai catch up. It turns out that they decided, well, we can't help a human because it's against the rules. But they think about it, and they're like, well, if we lose her and her mother, we're in deep shit. And they're like, and then finally Iwa's like, now if we help her to help her mother, aren't we doing our job? And it's a very shady reevaluation of their job, I guess you could say. It's very what's the phrase I'm looking for? They're kind of fudging the details a little. But it is also a good point. If they lose both of them, they're not doing their job anyway. So they basically, they're like, well, I have my speed and you have your fart powers, but what good is that going to do us in a storm? And then I think it's Mame actually says, we have friends. And they're all like, yeah, we do. We have friends. They have a lot of friends, it turns out. And they end up creating this wall against the storm that surrounds Koichi and Momo as they're going on his motorbike. Of course, when Koichi finally, one of them falls in, smacks him in the face, and that's when he can see it. And he can see all of them. And he faints from shock. And Iwa comes down and takes over and takes Momo the rest of the way. And then we basically cut to the next day where the storm is over. Her mother is resting peacefully in the local hospital or medical facility or whatever you want to call it. And she goes home to say goodbye to them because they'd already told her they were leaving that morning. And she asked them, please, can you take this letter to my father? And he said, and they're like, no, it's against the rules. And Mame's like, well, I could never remember the rules anyway, so I could take it. And, we skipped an important part. Well, we kind of skipped over one of the most important parts. My apologies. The letter to Momo.
Yes.
Yes. So after her father dies, we see Momo go into his office and she flips through a notebook where the first page says, Dear Momo, and that's it. It's an empty notebook. It's obvious he was going to write something to her and couldn't finish. And she's been hanging on to this letter, just wondering what he wanted to say. And they had the yokai had at one point wanted to report above. And they got the great idea to let Mame write it for training. And he started crying and realizes, what's up?
Iwa
Well,
walked
Mame,
into
first,
Momo's room.
Well, first, Mame tried to write the letter, only to realize, wait a minute, I can't read or write. And this, yes, Iwa goes into Momo's room, not knowing this, sees the letter on the desk that just says Dear Momo, and assumes that Mame started a letter and got distracted. And so he, quote, fixes the letter. And then he and Mame send it above in a ceremony that Momo walks into, and they end up getting her to help with the ceremony. And they do successfully send a letter above. She doesn't know it's her letter. And she ends up missing a meeting with Yota and Umi because she was busy looking for the letter. She was freaking out that it was missing.
Yep.
And Iwa didn't realize right away what was going on. It took him a minute to connect the dots. But yeah, they had already indicated to her they might be able to communicate with other ghosts. It's against the rules, but they kind of put that idea in her head by accident. So she wrote a letter to her father and she asked that they would please deliver it. And then, of course, we see her mother's up and about. She's feeling better. They are in much better, like they've really finally come to realize another thing while her mother was laying there suffering. One of the adults, I can't remember, I think it was her grandmother, made a comment about her bottling everything up inside, as we've mentioned a couple of times. And Momo realized, wait a minute, I've seen evidence of this. And one thing she saw was she walked in on her mother putting something in the cabinet. She goes to the cabinet and gets it out, and it's a photo album of her and her father. And she realizes that, yes, she is missing him. She just.
Well, and I wonder if this is the first time she's ever seen this album because she acts like she's never seen these photos before.
Well, I'm not. Maybe. I'm not sure. Because it looks like the kind of family album that they probably would have looked at together. She may have never really paid attention to some of the pictures before. But it's, again, it's more the discovery that her mother was looking at this album and reliving the old memories and, all that sort of thing. But you may be right that she never actually saw this album. I don't know that that's explicit or not.
Well, her mother seems to be the kind that seems to keep a lot of shit to herself,
right?
Include, but
yeah.
In any case,
right. I mean, I think it's like, and again, it could be that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we really only get hints of because, like, the movie is after the father passed away. So we get a lot of the backstory, but we don't really see it firsthand. We see it in flashback and that kind of thing. And it's obvious he spends a lot of time away on research. And so you get the feeling that she has for a long time tried to be rather self-sufficient, self-resilient. You get the impression that Momo herself, while she wants to be close with her parents and what have you, she seems relatively self-resilient too. And it could just be that that's one of the reasons why the two of them had so much trouble connecting these last couple months is just their personalities are like that, and that's but at any rate, we get this last scene of the two of them where they're at the beach and this festival is going on. And we see the straw boats that get put into the sea that Yota had told her about. And they sit there, they enjoy it as bystanders, basically. Yota and Umi look at them and say, hey, how's it going? But they're there to watch their father push the boat into the sea and whatever. And they all drift out to sea. And Momo and Ikuko kind of hang back. They kind of they're just talking with each other. They kind of hang back, don't leave as quickly as the others do. And then Momo senses something and turns around, and a boat is coming to shore for some reason that seems to, it's not just like one drifting into shore, like it's clearly coming to shore. And she's drawn to it, and she comes up to it, and she sees a little note, and she opens it, and it's the letter from her father, the one that had been sent above. Mm-hmm. And her mother comes up, oh, is that the letter? And then she feels something underneath, and she moves it, and it was the same piece of paper that Mame had tried to write a report on, but it has something on it, like her mother can't see it, but she can see it. And it's almost like a Mission Impossible thing. It's like as soon as she reads it, it starts to fade. But she reads this note, very simple, straight, to the point. Basically, I'm proud of you. Take care of your mother. And I'm sorry, basically, like he lets her know that he doesn't hold anything against her. It's it's clearly a note from her father. Maybe the note he was trying to write all along, but not obviously with a different perspective, because before he wasn't dead. But but basically, and her mother's just like, she doesn't see it, but she believes it this time. She's basically like, yeah, that's the way he always talked, like it's almost offhand, like that definitely sounds like him. And so they have a little moment where they're both kind of, hey, Anderson. And then we have a last scene. We mentioned the kids at the bridge and how they like to jump off the bridge.
Yep.
I don't know if we really mentioned that Momo has not partaken in this activity.
Nope, and she was afraid of jumping.
Yeah.
And so I believe it was Iwa that actually kicked her into the water a couple of times earlier.
She was attempting to do it herself, by herself, from a lower height. And like she was standing on some of the jetties by the sea and trying to do it. And he ends up just coming up and just shoving her in. Yeah. And he does it again. And she just gets angry. But it kind of helped her a little. But a little bit. But basically.
And he was like, great guy. Just a little comical.
Yeah. But at the end, she finally jumps in. And it shows, it's sort of like thematic of her finally overcoming the things that were holding her back, basically, I guess you could say. But she finally joins them and they tell her, "You're an island girl now," and then we launch into the lovely theme song over the end. It's got this nice little song at the end that where apparently it's called "Where You're a Beautiful Eagle, Maharoba," um, by Yuko Hara. And the credits roll and all that kind of, and there we are. That's the end. So I know that's mostly it for the plot and I guess the characters. Do you guys have any more you want to throw in before we go into production and whatnot?
Nope, I don't. I
Okay.
think we've covered a fair amount of
Okay.
it.
Good deal. So okay. So the apparently the title of that song is Orowashi Maharoba Utsukushi Basho, uh, which is a very different translation on IMDb than what it was on Anime News Network, and I'm not sure which one to go with. But at any rate, like I said, by Yuko Hara, very pretty tune. Um, Overall, the movie is the main production is by Production IG. They do a lot of really good stuff. There's a lot of other companies involved. Shaft, Studio Ghibli, uh, Gainax, a bunch of studios apparently did various bits of the in between animation. Studio L and Studio Road helped with the finish animation. Uh, like I said, director and screenwriter Hiroyuki Okiura. He also did the storyboarding. We have music by Mina Kubota. Um, I love the music in this one. And the overall production, I think you guys might have mentioned, but certainly I would agree, a little bit of a Ghibli-ish vibe to the animation, but with a little bit of more production. IG often does slightly more realistic animation, and I feel like they are definitely hewing closer to it here. It's mostly the portrayals of the yokai that really give you that Ghibli vibe. I
Well,
would
what gives me the Ghibli vibe is that is when all the yokai end
right,
up gathering together and basically creating their own like a monorail
right,
the bridge, and that kind of reminds me of My Neighbor Toto.
right. And I would not be at all surprised if the
Toro.
in between, yeah, I would not be at all surprised if the in between animation that Ghibli did was that scene. It would not surprise me in the least. Gainax too does some wild and crazy stuff, so I wouldn't be surprised if they were involved in that part. Um, but what are y'all's thoughts overall on the production and music?
Tammy, did you want to go have a go at what you thought of production before I do?
I thought it was decent. I mean, like I said, I'm not normally into anime, but I
Mhm.
like um I how do I put that? I li- I liked the anime itself in here.
Okay,
Um, I don't know how to explain it. I I think I don't always like the look of anime is part of the thing that I don't
right,
like about it. But in this one, it's it was different. You know
okay.
I don't know if it seemed more realistic how it was done on this one
Hmm.
compared to other ones. that I haven't liked or what, but I did, I guess that's why I did say I like the production because I actually did get into this one. I thought it was done nicely, and so I don't. I guess the only thing I can say is this anime doesn't look so fake. It doesn't look so It doesn't look. It does. It doesn't look so anime. It looks
Right.
more. I don't know how else to describe it. So
No, I mean it makes sense. Like it's a more, I would say, or you can tell me if you are getting at this idea, but like somewhat like and the character design, incidentally, is by Masashi Ando and the director Hiroyuki Okiura. I feel like the animation design, the character design, is more realistic than is often the case. Like that, the proportions are the shorthand for a lot of times for anime is big eyes, small mouth. And I don't really feel like they did that too much here. You can kind of see that picture I have of Momo. It's not really set up quite that way. If that makes sense.
right, it's a
Right.
more like I said, more real than the normal anime, which is
Right.
just it's like okay. I mean, if you want to look at cartoons in general, you
Yeah.
know, they yeah they are cartoons. They're not real or whatever, but there's different different looks,
Oh
of
yeah.
things.
Oh yeah.
So
I've definitely seen anime that are much more realistic in their look than this one. Um, actually, Dave, did you join us for Bakano? I'm trying to remember.
I did not. I would have loved to,
Yeah.
Brandon didn't provide me with any episodes at the time, and you
Yeah.
know how out of print that thing is.
Oh yeah. Oh, I know. I deeply envy everyone who has a copy of it. But Bakano and Dora, which is by the same people, have a relatively realistic look. But a show that even more so, uh, Black Lagoon is a good example. Black Lagoon has a very realistic look to the characters. There are a few out there that are very much so. And then there are ones where it's not.
Yeah,
There's
is Black
definitely some
Lagoon
variety.
is that based on the movie?
What's that?
The Black Lagoon thing you're talking about, is
No,
that based on the movie?
no,
no, Black
Oh,
Lagoon is a really good, really fun show that I want to cover one day. It's basically like if John Woo and Quentin Tarantino teamed up to make an anime, that would be the one they'd come up with.
oh,
It's about a bunch of mercenaries in Southeast Asia, and it's a very action heavy, violent series. Very, very interesting. A lot of fun. But again, very much more realistic look than your typical anime. Although it has a few anime-ish flourishes to it, like this one. But
I do have to say I'm glad you told me to give it a chance and to watch it, so I'm
good
glad
deal.
I did. So
Good deal. Well, I mean, and I've said before, I think that's one of the points of this channel. Like, it's one of the reasons I do this is I am exposed to stuff I never would have watched otherwise. And sometimes we get something like Bunny the Killer thing. And sometimes we get something. This past week, I revisited Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight, which was an absolute gem that I was very happy to be introduced. So you never know. Once in a while we even get something like the Velocipaster. I mean, That was a classic. But anyway, how about you, Dave? What were your thoughts on the production?
I thought the creature design was really cool.
Okay.
And I did notice that when they were all about when they specifically showed like bits and pieces of the actual little town on the island, I could tell that there was a lot of detail to like a lot of the buildings and
Right.
whatnot. So whoever did the animation to the architecture of the island and whatnot, I thought paid attention to more detail than most.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I
not to
think
interrupt, David. Yeah, I thought the island, the pictures of the island was done really nice. You know how they drew the island and everything.
Right.
I thought
Right.
that was really nice looking. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Was that it, Dave?
not
Was that
I kind of have the same viewpoint as the grandfather. How he talks about the new bridge or whatnot going in, because it'll bring a lot more people to the island, and they were so used to quiet.
yeah. Oh, I fully agree. I fully agree. And actually, another interesting parallel with other things. Um, I just recently finished about a month or so ago. I recently finished one of the newer, if not the newest, book by John Grisham, which is called Camino Ghosts. And a major plot point, one of the major plot points, hinges on a development company trying to build a bridge to an island that does not have one. And it just now occurred to me that, wow, it's kind of interesting that I'm watching this movie where that just a month or so later, and also the book being called Camino Ghosts kind of fits with that vaguely uh, like afterlife thing. Very different story, but interesting that little parallel there. And I agree. I think the animation in this is quite gorgeous. There is some CG that could have been better integrated. I did see a couple of moments where I felt like the CG wasn't quite up to the same level as the rest of the production. But other than that, I think it's a beautifully animated movie. And did y'all have particular thoughts on the music?
Yeah, it was okay.
Okay.
It was serviceable. I,
Okay.
I guess when it comes to titleistic songs, I much prefer it mostly in English.
Ah,
So when things are done in English, like when I watched the Count of Monte Cristo,
uh-huh.
the Japanese animation, I
uh,
liked the title song to that.
right. Well, that did have some interesting music. Yeah. The
But
yeah.
yes, for me, the music was okay. It fit it, but because of um, I was paying more attention to actually reading the words and
Ah,
understanding what was going on on instead of the music.
it makes
So
sense.
There
And
too, especially on the first time
right.
watching.
Right.
If I was watching it maybe a second time, maybe I'd actually pay attention to a little bit of the background sounds or to see if they actually had a soundtrack to it at any given point in time, which I don't really think it had much of one.
Well, there was a lot of music.
Okay.
there was a lot of music, and I did again I revisited it twice, so I got a chance to listen to it. I will admit the first time I watched this, it didn't really leave an impact in my brain. And even now, I couldn't really tell you the tune. I'd have
Yeah.
to probably see it a few more times. I did really love that end theme. I personally, I think the Japanese is a beautiful language. I love listening to music in Japanese. I would say the same thing about Spanish and Italian, but just like with Italian and most Spanish, because there are a couple of exceptions, there are a couple of Spanish songs I can sing along to. Most Japanese stuff, I can't sing along to it. I don't know the words well enough.
I mean,
So
I will
there is,
say that
yeah.
that Carl Orff's Carmina Burana is a fantastic
What's
album.
that?
The opera,
Ah,
where they're speaking, they're singing Latin.
ah,
Oh, Fortuna, Velut
yeah.
Luna.
And
That,
that's another good example of like operas more often than not tend to be in other languages, and the way they sing, and I guess the point I was going towards is a lot of times, again, I just rewatched Ghostbusters, and there are very few songs that are more catchy than Ray Parker Jr.'s Ghostbusters. That is a song that you will be singing along to, and you will be humming it for the next week. And I would not say that about the theme to this movie,
who are you going to call?
but
Somebody
but that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It's
else.
just it's a different way of enjoying the music. You know what I mean? But it's at any rate, so let's go ahead and start wrapping this up. Let's say, do we have a favorite character? And do we, well, we already know Dave's favorite scene, but we can go ahead and still do favorite scenes. and and I'm trying to think if there's something fun to throw out as an addition, but we'll keep it simple this time. Just say like, what's your favorite character, favorite scenes? Um, Dave, we'll start with you.
Alrighty. My favorite character is Mame.
I'm surprised that David didn't rewind that one scene.
I'll definitely have to rewatch that part. Um, in fact, I will have to maybe even try to find that part, maybe if they have it on YouTube, and just replay it. But yeah, that is my favorite scene in the whole entire thing. But my favorite character is Mame. He's
Okay.
just he's adorable.
Right.
I mean, he looks like Gollum, except he's Gollum who hasn't gone to sleep yet.
It's like if they lobotomized Gollum.
Well, yeah, I could see if they did that, but yeah, and even Kawe reminded me a little bit of Gollum, a little bit in his stooped nature.
How?
Except he kind of reminded me of those vultures in the beginning of the Jungle, the ones that kind of shrugged and was like, "So what do you want to do?"
I don't know what you want to
do.
Hey, now don't start that again. Kawa would be the closest to Gollum personality wise. Definitely. He was the closest personality wise. None of them are an exact match, thankfully, because Gollum's a little shit, but and none of them were quite going on about the precious, although one gets the idea that Kawa would have probably started doing that with the mirror before long.
My own, I
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, I get a kick out of Mame, especially when he's like, you know what, I probably will forget the rules, so I will take that letter. Of
Right.
course, Kawe grabs it.
Right. All right. What about you, Tammy?
I think it's called Mame. Is what the
Okay.
one you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The little goblin.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one that's my favorite. He's
Mm-hmm.
just cute in his own way.
He's totally
Um,
adorbs.
Favorite scenes. I guess one of my favorite scenes is when she's sitting there at that um, monument or whatever in the rain, and just sees the outlines of them, and then the lightning. All of a sudden, they become totally, completely. You can see them completely,
Mm-hmm.
and then little mommy lands in her lap, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just like all of a sudden, this is like it's a total reality, not only for her but for us watching because we get to see them, you know.
Right.
So that would have to be my favorite scene.
All righty. Very good. I I'm kind of tempted to say Mame as well because he is such a sweet, adorable character. Even though he's ugly as sin, he's still pretty fun.
He's cute.
Yeah, but he is really sweet and completely guileless. And the fact that he believes everything and remembers nothing is just great. But to mix it up a little, uh, at the end of the day, the movie is about Momo, and so you have to at least kind of like her. And I definitely was rooting for her, even though she frustrates me for a while. Ultimately, I find her a likable enough protagonist, and I guess I would probably say it's almost a toss up between her and Mame, to be honest. But I'll go with Momo just for a little bit of variety. Um, as far as favorite scenes, it's kind of hard to pick a favorite because there's several little ones. Well, I'm always like this. It's very rare that every now and then I'll get one where, like Dave had here, that's just like that's the scene. Every now and then I'll get one of those, but it's rare. Um, I think a lot of the scenes where we get to see this side of Mame, of the part where he just plops in her lap, uh that Tammy just talked about, the part where he's like, wait, I thought Lord Sugawara sent us down or whatever, like it's just, or the part where him and Iwa and Momo are doing the dance, like those were great little moments. But if I had to pick one, I'd actually probably pick that scene at the very end where she gets the letter back from her father at the beach. It's just like it's that scene to give you the feels, and it's just really well done and a good way to wrap up the main emotional storyline. So I really like that, and I think I'll probably go with that um, for the top. And well, I
One thing I did want to mention that I don't
okay,
know if anybody else really did is,
yeah,
you know, that whole scene where they're going to try and get help to save Momo's mom, and
mm-hmm,
they're all working together, and they're giving her the protection from the
mm-hmm.
storm. I think that whole thing going across the bridge is actually pretty cool, though, with
Oh yeah,
all these goblins together and this whole thing. Like it is pretty cool.
right.
So
And it was also pretty funny the way that Koichi just straight passes out when he sees them all. It's like, yeah, he wasn't ready for that.
No, he wasn't.
But anyway, I guess that about wraps it up. Did anyone have any final thoughts or?
I'm actually probably going to pick this up for real.
Okay.
Eventually, once I get a chance, I think it deserves to be in my collection.
All right.
So, just letting you, ladies and gentlemen, know that I think it's good enough to be in my collection. Even though I have probably a lot of films that I probably, because I dislike them so much, should not be in my collection.
I have a few of those myself. Not many. But yeah. But I have a lot of stuff I would never have picked up on my own, but people tend to give me weird shit. But
I like to think that some of all of us have rubbed off on each other over the
oh
years,
yeah,
so.
no doubt. Like I said, I've picked up some stuff that from the channel. Like there's a lot of stuff. I won't say that I make an effort to get everything we've watched, but I do make an effort to get the lion's share of it. And I've picked up a lot of titles that I either doubt I would have gotten or I can guarantee you I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. There are some that I probably won't ever get, but you know, it's it's a lot of fun. It's nice to grab some stuff you wouldn't have otherwise. And
I watched some films that you wouldn't probably normally watch on your own.
Right. I mean, again, Demon Knight. I mean, I gotta say, Billy Zane just absolutely in that movie. He just absolutely makes that movie absolutely worth having. I'm super proud of my copy of the Velocipaster. I have one Vinegar Syndrome movie in my collection, and it was one of your choices, the Six String Samurai. Because that was
I still need to get that limited thing.
Such a nice looking set.
See, I got into that one through one of my bosses that I had at George Webb's, and he really liked that film, and I think he likes another one called the Wizard or the Wizard of Time and something else, which we haven't covered yet, because the Wizard of Time and Science and Time, or I'll have to figure out the title, but when we have another random month, I'll have to put that one forward, because it very much was like Bill Nye the Science Guy
nice.
On drugs.
And Dave, you'll be happy to know that one of my pickups may have been inspired by this channel. I cannot swear to it if I would have ever picked up Killer Clowns from Outer Space, but I have. So, all right. So, Dave, I guess I'll hand it back to you then. That's Letter to Momo.
Okay. Let's go around and hopefully you have liked our discussion on Letter to Momo. Like, share, and subscribe. Let us know down in the comments what you thought of our discussion, what you thought of our of the movie, and just let us know down there. And let's go around and tell the audience a little bit about ourselves and what we do. Let's start with you, Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right. Well, I am Kotobuki Jake. I am the co-host of Septum Sim versus World, where we like to celebrate physical media. We have done so somewhat infrequently of late, but every now and then we do a nice pickup video. We've been airing what we call tabletop horror, where we discuss films that directly or indirectly deal with D&D and Dungeons and Dragons. So it's been an interesting journey through that. Uh, if and we are also involved either directly or indirectly, mostly Brandon more than me, but we both of us are involved in the various production and release of independent cinema, and definitely look up Amityville Webcam. That's Brandon's directorial debut, which I feature in, and so do the cats that I am keeping company this evening. Uh, um, Anderson is the greatest cameo of all time. Well, not all time, but pretty close. And so, yeah, definitely look that one up. I keep pretty busy with my day job, but try to find time for many another thing, including this is November. It is National Novel Writers Month. I'm going to make an effort to get some writing done this month. So we'll see how that goes, but hopefully I'll have something to report by the end of the month. So knock on wood.
Alrighty.
Meanwhile, I always like to make time to watch stuff to join these fine folks for our weekly discussions. And again, this month is going to be kind of random, so I'll look forward to seeing what other random things come down the pike.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Heading over to you, Tammy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I like going on this channel and another one with David and everybody, and listening to everybody else's opinions, and um, like Jake's talked about earlier today about there's definitely been a lot of movies I probably would never have watched if it wasn't going on, if we're going on both of these, and there's definitely some I wish I did not ever watch, but then there's a few
Yep.
that surprised me, like the one that we had tonight.
Okay.
So it's interesting. It's a lot of fun to go on both. I have my own collection and stuff of things. So but that's about it right now, because now that the summer is over, my car is turned into Sleeping Beauty. So no more car shows.
I guess as
Alrighty.
chilly as it's been here the last few days, summer must be very much over there.
Well, it's 10:30 here, and it's 65 degrees right now because there's been
Oh,
storms.
oh wow. Okay, it's warmer there than it is here. Huh. Interesting.
Well, on that note, I am one of your hosts, David Straggy. I am the founding father of Inside Movies Galore, where we go on about various different films of all shapes and sizes and years, uh, whether they be independent, silent film, you name it, we cover it. But I also moonlight on a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where we also discuss films from time to time, mostly every Sunday. And we are going to be covering the uh, some and video reviews, um, and some gameplay from time to time. I think I just started the first season of The Walking Dead, the definitive um, Telltale series.
Hmm.
So, and I do believe that I finished the first season on my channel. So if you want to check that out, go right ahead. I also started playing Star Wars Dark Forces Remastered. So you can check out some of that gameplay on there and whatnot. And I'm also going to be releasing a Batman fan film eventually this month, which you might have seen in the first two segments on the Versus Awards, which if you have not checked out that long video that Brandon and Jacob put out, please do, because there were definitely some interesting developments in award history.
Yeah.
So
we actually had multiple winners accept their awards this year, which is nice.
which is awesome.
Yeah.
So eventually, I believe I'm going to be setting it up to be because I took the three segments, including the third segment that took a long time for me to finish on my own. And it's all going to be put together in one 22. I think it's a 22-minute fan film, and it's going to be out there for everyone to view. So I wasn't sure what it was going to be, and I don't think Brandon knew exactly what it was going to end up being until the very end. So it should be interesting once I release it and see what people think. Even though it was made mostly in my bedroom and my man cave in my basement and a few other areas. But in any case, definitely check those out when those release. When Brandon gets back, we're gonna go back to working on the Tales of the Forgotten Part 2. I definitely have some scenes that I want to film now that I have a couple of masks to work with and whatnot, and then hopefully, I'm not sure if we'll get to it this year, Jake, but we'll finish up some of your scenes probably after the New Year's, the way it's looking. So, had to set up a lot of things in order to have that monster short happen. So,
right.
But in any case, like, share, and subscribe. Next week, we will be covering arachnophobia.
Woo!
Which, was a choice that was thought about by Jacob at one point in time, but Tammy bit the gun and decided to choose it for one of her choices this month. And then I believe we are following it up with my choice the following week with blood-sucking pharaohs in Pittsburgh. And then I guess, it's another crazy film. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out, and maybe you can join us for a discussion on it when that happens. And then, of course, we're going to follow it with a discussion on Boris and Natasha, which is either the first or I believe it's an earlier film dealing with the adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Right.
Because there was a movie that was called that, but I do believe that this was done first, if I remember.
This one, I want to say Boris and Natasha is from the early 90s, and I think the other one was like the end of the 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty sure. So it was very weird because this one came out first. But anyways, we'll leave that for that discussion. Those are the things that are coming up, and hopefully you get a chance to check out some of these films.
1990, 1992 is when Boris and Natasha came out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, if everyone can say good night, we'll see y'all next time here on Inside Movies Galore.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye. All right.